You know what? Like I said, this is the Lion season, and the Cowboys pretty much stated that they like two of these offensive linemen that's around the globe here, and this is Tyler Booker. I think that he's a phenomenal offensive lineman, and I think that he could help out in so many ways. But for the Cowboys to come out and say, hey, man, let's bring him in. We really like him, as well as the other guy, Simmons. This will also play into the mindset of where the Cowboys are going to go with this particular draft. We have a lot of holes. We have a lot of needs. And when I'm saying that this is a situation and scenario that we can look back on and say, how many offensive linemen do we really need to encounter for the Dallas Cowboys? I can argue the fact that the Cowboys should pass up on these offensive linemen due to the history, the historical data that goes into this details of who the Cowboys pretty much are as it relates to drafting O-line for your mind. Now, granted, when you have a no identity as it relates to this team and as it relates to when we start first drafting offensive linemen, we can argue that was the best move that Jason Garrett made, right, was going to get those offensive linemen. Even with that, we didn't see like the birth of our running backs doing some explosive stuff until like it was all said and done. We only had one good year from DeMarco Murray, and that was 2014 when we decided to run the ball. Remember, you got to understand the history so you won't repeat yourself, right? And then in 2016, what they did ultimately, 15 was the best year our offensive line had, by the way, on the run, and that's a whole nother conversation. But 2016, we got a generational talent type of running back who the NFL kind of sullied and denigrated in 2017, but neither here nor there. Zeke was drafted for Tony Romo, not Dak Prescott, right? So when we start looking at everything as it relates to this Cowboys team, right, in 2016, run the ball, that was really helped this team out tremendously. Then everybody, mama, uncle, cousin, was still talking about the Cowboys, the greatest O-line that ever existed, right? And we kept that type of identity with the Cowboys. But in actuality, the last time that we were successful as it relates to health with our offensive line was 2015. Now, fast forwarding to now, we do have a hole with Zach Martin is that, but I think that what we need to look at with all of this is just sit back. Mike McCarthy never been known for a running type of coach, right? And those 4.5 years, 5 years basically with Mike McCarthy was a waste of time because he was like the Jason Garrett 2.0, right? And it was vanilla and bland, and we didn't have a plan as it relates to run game. Where Shoddy is cut from a different cloth, and he brought in Clayton Adams and Connor Riley, who they do look at strategy, scheme, schematics, however you want to look at it, as it relates to running the ball, and we're going to see better because at the end of the day, when you're talking about O-line for your mind, it's primarily scheme. You got to have a scheme put into place. Doesn't matter if we have 5 Larry Allens, right? If you don't have a precise scheme, then things will not work out right with this team. Now, my guy, when you look at Terrence Steele, he's been what's on bottom of most people's feet because if you look at his scouting report, he's never been that elite at pass pro. He's been one of those grit grindy guys, even though he has smaller legs. He's been a good run blocking guy. And the Cowboys for the last 2 seasons, and especially with a new coach named Mike Solari here, we've seen a crazy drop-off with Terrence Steele, right? And one can argue under Mike Solari, the offensive line been on the downhill. Not saying that Solari is the problem, but what I'm getting at, and shout out to Defy Talk for the beautiful overlays on all of this. But I'm going to say this, though. When we look at the complete picture, do we need an offensive line? I can argue and say yes. Do we want our offensive line? I can argue and say yes. You can make the argument for the offensive line. But what have the offensive line results been? Everyone have a reason, but results are what matter. And it's going to take you anywhere between 2 to 3 years or even more when other teams in your particular division is going out there getting skilled players that can catch touchdowns. You can block it up for 10 seconds, and if it's Jalen Tolbert, if he can't get free, what do that mean? And I'm not beating up Jalen Tolbert, by the way. If we don't have a concise plan of what we're going to do with running the ball, it doesn't matter if we have the Great Wall of Dallas. If you don't have a scheme. And I hear what people saying, well, hold on, Law, it's Dak, it's Dak, it's Dak. Okay, well, let me ask you this. Did anyone do their research with this particular team when you do have Dak Prescott gaining some yards with the running back? Oh, but he need an offensive line to do that. No, you need strategy and scheme. We ain't talking about running out of shotgun, right? I'm talking about absolutely power eye, pro style. I'm talking about GT counters. I'm talking about stretching the field with your run game, your strategy and scheme. The Cowboys, right now, we have 15 offensive linemen on this team. By the end of the draft, around this time next week, we probably have 18 to maybe 19. One can argue a full 20 when the undrafted guys get here. There's only one football, right? What they going to do, groups and sets of 5? Shoot, you have a whole 5 sets over there with offensive linemen. And who are they going to go up against, right? So what I'm getting at is the Cowboys. I'm not dogging if the Cowboys do go with an offensive line, but you better pick someone who will be day one ready. And I'm not finna have Tyler Guyton to play a full year or pieces of a year because he was a healthy stretch on some games at left tackle last year for us to say, let's scrap it and let's put him at right tackle, right? And let's go through this growing pains with a Kevin Banks as a rookie, right? Or let's go with this growing pains with Josh Simmons, and then we go back to this and say, hey, if only he wasn't hurt, right? And at some point, I get it. The law of diminishing rates of return is always will be bestowed upon everyone. But in actuality, even with Tyler, what we're going to be the team of Tylers too, Booker, shout out to him. But if he's the plug at that guard spot, and I'm not trying to go against anyone that say, hey, he would be a good fit. But what I'm getting at is just be careful, Cowboy Nation, because you can block it all the way up and you still got Javonte and Deuce Vaughn in the backfield. And if they can't turn 5 yards, which is free, into 6 or 7, then we are in other troubles. But neither here nor there. The only thing that I can say with all of this is that coaching staff, they know what's best to get this run game going. And if we can run the rock, and if we looking at the offensive line is needed for that, then lo and behold, do that. But keep in mind, when we won those rings in the 90s, there wasn't many on that offensive line that was drafted in the first. And keep in mind, Big L.A., he came a little later on down the stretch. Let that sink in. It's all about strategy, systems, and scheme. Post me your thoughts, post me your concerns with the Cowboys if they do draft. It's cons and pros to everything. But I just believe that we need skilled players, right? We need players that can score touchdowns. That's what we need. Cowboy Nation, post me your thoughts, post me your concerns down below. That's been my time. I really thank you all for yours. And remember, you're listening to nothing but the best. Let's get it, Cowboy Nation. I know. Offensive line people, they mad at me now. Look, we got to get an offensive line guy. Well, truth be told, it goes the way it goes. DC for life, not for short. Peace. We about.